Look, I need to talk about what happened in Detroit, and honestly, I'm still processing it. The Dallas Cowboys just lost 44-30 to the Detroit Lions on Thursday Night Football, and before you click away thinking this is just another post-game rant, let me tell you something. This game revealed a problem so deep, so fundamental about this team, that I'm not sure we can fix it this season. And the worst part? It's not what you think it is. What's up, Cowboys? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Cowboys. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about breaking down everything you need to know about the America's team. This game was supposed to be different. All week long, we talked about this being a pseudo-playoff game, right? Big game atmosphere, national television, a chance to prove we belong in the conversation with the elite teams. And you know what we got instead? We got a team that looked like they'd never played in a big game before. The jitters were real, man. You could feel anxiousness through the screen. Meanwhile, Detroit came out flying to football, making plays on kickoffs, executing like a well-oiled machine. It was night and day. The thing that kills me about this loss is that it felt like a microcosm of our entire season. We dug ourselves a hole too deep to climb out of. We made too many mistakes. And honestly, the game looked a lot like the pre-buy, pre-Quinon Williams trade version of the Cowboys. It took us forever to get going on offense, and the defense? They couldn't stop Detroit at all. Once Amon-Ra St. Brown was made active for the game, everything changed. And here's the kicker. He wasn't even slowed down by that ankle injury. Our defense didn't look prepared for it at all. Now, let me break down what went wrong on defense, because this is where things get really frustrating. They couldn't manage to avoid getting blocked down on the edge, which allowed Jahmyr Gibbs to absolutely go crazy. By the time we finally woke up and started to fight back, it was too late. The defense never really did enough to put us back in this game. 12 drives for Detroit in this game. One of them was the final drive when the game was already over. 408 yards. They averaged 7.2 yards per play. They didn't even run the ball particularly well early on, but they got a couple big runs late. David Montgomery had a 35-yard run. Gibbs had a nice little touchdown run at the end. But the real killer was Jared Goff. Goff was incredibly efficient, getting the ball out of his hands quickly. And you know what's crazy? Sometimes not even that quickly. We weren't able to break through despite the injuries to the middle of their offensive line. We weren't getting the pressure we'd gotten previously. We were missing Jadeveon Clowney, who had gotten some of our most important sacks in the last few weeks. It felt like in the last 2 weeks we had gotten by with middling to less than average defensive end talent because we were getting so much from our defensive tackles. But it wasn't enough to make up for losing Clowney. Donovan Eziruku is one person, and James Houston? He's a great high-effort guy who can get there, but he's ultimately an undersized pass rusher who was cut by the Lions at one point. He's not quite the caliber you need to close out names like this. This is the third time this season we've given up 40 or more points. Even last week, we gave up 28 to Kansas City. Sure, we had 2 quarters where we got stops, but that's a Chiefs offense that hasn't been particularly great all season long. For a couple weeks, it felt like we were making progress. But then again, we played the Eagles and the Raiders, 2 offenses that aren't playing particularly well right now. I don't know how to feel about this defense anymore. It feels like we're right back to where we were pre-Quinon Williams trade, and that's incredibly depressing. The Lions completely outclassed us physically. We were being pushed around, especially on the edge. We couldn't contain the edge at all. Sam Williams had a good game as a special teamer and made a play with a hurry or a tackle for loss, but he's still Sam Williams. They were putting an extra body out there on the offensive line and crashing down on our defensive ends, and we didn't have an answer for it. Add on top of that a rotating array of terrible older linebackers who couldn't avoid getting blocked, and you've got a recipe for disaster. That Kenneth Murray video is going to make people's eyes bleed, I'm telling you. Here's a stat that'll blow your mind. From the 6-minute mark in the second quarter, this is what the Lions did. Touchdown, touchdown, blocked field goal, touchdown, touchdown, end of game. The only stop we got was a blocked field goal, and it was a short field goal at that. Just an awful, awful performance. Now let's talk about Siobhan Revel and Nate Thomas. These young guys really struggled tonight. Revel's a rookie corner starting a second game as a starter, and it looked like it, man. Every time someone asks if Trevon Diggs is going to play when he comes back, this is why we say, yeah, probably they'll at least rotate him in. These guys are young and they need to stay out there and take their lumps, but maybe not at the cost of the game. It would have been nice to have Trevon out there. And that brings me to something that's been bothering me. There's been speculation that maybe we're being a little too cautious with injuries. Guys like Trevon Diggs practiced all week. In an ideal world, you'd like to give them 10 days to get ready, but our playoff odds are now down to 10%. It's very, very unlikely this team makes the playoffs. According to The Athletic, even if we win our next 4 games, we only have a 46% chance of making the playoffs. At some point, you just need these guys out there playing. You can't worry so much about whether a guy is 100% healthy.
The coaching staff felt like they were coaching in a big game for the first time, while Dan Campbell and his crew just knew how to push all the right buttons. Let me start with Brian Schottenheimer, because we scored 30 points in this game, but left a lot of points on the board. We've been really good at these end-of-half situations where you get points and then you can get points right out of halftime, but there was a 4th and 3 from Detroit's 37-yard line with 55 seconds left, and Detroit had 1 timeout left. At that spot, you're better off just going for it and trying to milk the rest of the clock. Maybe you score a touchdown, but you need to come out of that drive with at least a field goal and the Lions not getting possession again. Instead, we settled for a 55-yard field goal, and 6 plays later, Detroit didn't even have to burn a timeout, and they got down there to kick a short field goal. It's little moments like that where games are won and lost. Then there was the Dak Prescott safety situation on 4th down. You could theoretically snap the ball out of the end zone, take the safety, kick off with Brandon Aubrey, and get better field position. Yeah, you're giving up 2 points, but what we ultimately did was punch from our own end zone. Detroit got the ball at our 38 and scored 3 plays later. And don't even get me started on 4th and 3 at the end of the game after the Jake Ferguson penalty. Go for it. You're going to need 2 scores anyway. It's much easier to get a field goal when you're right down there, where you could score a touchdown. Kicking a 25-yard field goal really doesn't do much for you. Speaking of superstars, let's talk about CeeDee Lamb. It's really unfortunate that he got hurt because he was on pace to have a monster performance. They could not cover him. 6 catches for 121 yards, almost all of it in the first half, on 8 targets. He had another target downfield where he was wide open and we just missed him. This could have been something special. You wonder what this game would have looked like if CeeDee stays healthy. Even the times when he wasn't getting the ball, you could see him completely breaking ankles on the Amazon Next Gen view. There were so many times when Dak couldn't get it to him because of pressure or whatever reason. There was a lot of meat left on the bone. Detroit made incredible efforts to stop CeeDee and Pickens, and CeeDee was able to still break through a little bit. But George Pickens? Man, this was not his game. 5 catches for 37 yards on 9 targets. He also had 2 penalties, including a face mask call that put us back on 1st and 25. He just looked disinterested. And listen, Pickens has been awesome this year. He's had so many great games, but there were a couple times he jogged through his route. On the first drive, Dak tried to throw him a slant, and Pickens had no interest in running over the middle of the field. The 2 penalties weren't entirely his fault. The face mask wasn't malicious, and the offensive pass interference was absolute nonsense. He was trying to get skinny between 2 defenders, and they still called him for it because they're playing with 5'8", 185-pound corners. But I can't disagree that on those plays, Pickens wasn't running at full speed, and he needs to be. Dak overall played really well, but even he had moments. He threw the ball way behind the line of scrimmage on a lateral on one play. Jake Ferguson tried to get extra yards on 3rd and 25 and fumbled the ball. George Pickens fumbled at the 2-yard line. For whatever reason, this team was not sharp in any facet. Both teams produced a lot of big plays, but the difference was the Lions were efficiently able to create explosive plays. We were creating them too, but we were also throwing it backwards, taking 9-yard sacks instead of just throwing the ball away. Moment after moment where we shot ourselves in the foot. The main takeaway here is that this team just isn't ready for this yet. They need another year, they need more talent on defense, and we definitely need a new special teams coach. At the end of the season, there's going to be an evaluation to make about whether we roll the dice once more with the defensive coordinator for another season of rebuilding from scratch, or if we move on from a defensive coordinator that, man, it's hard to trust at this point. One thing is for sure, this wasn't just a loss, this was a reality check.